I call Louise Haigh to ask her urgent question. Louise Haigh.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to make a statement on the UK's commitment to its legal obligations under the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are fully committed to implementing the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol, and we have already taken many practical steps to do so. The protocol was designed to maintain the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, the gains of the peace process, and to protect the interests of all people in Northern Ireland. And that is what this government will do and will continue to deliver upon. Throughout the last year, as we have taken steps to comply with our obligations under the protocol, we have always sought to honour both our international obligations and our commitments to the people of Northern Ireland. The protocol itself states that it should impact as little as possible on the everyday life of communities, and it explicitly depends on the consent of the people of Northern Ireland for its continued existence. As we continue to implement the protocol, this overriding need must be kept in mind. This government has consistently said that people and businesses in Northern Ireland will have unfettered access to the whole of the UK market. Our manifesto made a very clear commitment on this. The approach that we will take in this legislation builds on that commitment and on the specific commitment we made in the New Decade New Approach Agreement to legislate by the end of the year for unfettered access. This has been one of the most consistent asks from Northern Ireland businesses since the protocol was agreed, and we are now moving to provide certainty. Our approach guarantees that we will be able to deliver the objectives that we set out for implementing the protocol in a way that protects the interests of the people and the economy of Northern Ireland. We are working hard to resolve any outstanding issues through the Joint Committee and will continue to approach those discussions in good faith. But we are taking limited and reasonable steps to create a safety net, one that ensures the government is always able to deliver on its commitments to the people of Northern Ireland and in line with the protocol.
Louise.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, for granting this urgent question. This week starts a crucial period in our trade negotiations with the EU. Labour want the government to succeed, to secure a deal in the national interest and to protect the Good Friday Agreement. So it is very welcome to hear the Secretary of State's confirmation of its commitment to the protocol. But it has been deeply concerning ahead of these talks that the Prime Minister is appearing to undermine our legal obligations and his own deal. The resignation of the government's chief legal adviser this morning suggests that concern over the government's approach runs to the very top. It risks jeopardising the progress of the negotiation and the chance of securing a much-needed deal. Now, the protocol was not foisted on the Prime Minister by Brussels, by a previous government or by Parliament. The Prime Minister personally renegotiated it, campaigned on it, legislated for it, ratified it in an international treaty. With these latest moves, some fear the Prime Minister is once again using Northern Ireland as a political football to suit his wider political means. Because we cannot forget, at the heart of this are the people and businesses of Northern Ireland who risk paying the price. For them, this is not the latest episode in a Brexit drama. This is a profoundly worrying moment that will shape their livelihoods, their businesses and their future. It reopens the uncertainty they hoped had been settled. It takes us backwards in negotiations and undermines trust with the European Commission. Because ultimately, Mr Speaker, this is about trust. How can the people of Northern Ireland trust this government with the careful progress made over the last 2 decades when they tell them the protocol is necessary to protect it and then suggest it undermines it? How can the British people trust a government who swore they had an oven-ready deal only 10 months ago and now tell them that deal was ambiguous and contradictory? And how can our partners and allies around the world now trust us to enter trade negotiations or multilateral arrangements? So can the Secretary of State confirm whether the Treasury Solicitor resigned today in response to these plans by the government to bring forward legislation that will undermine our legal obligations? Can he confirm whether a ministerial direction has been given on the internal market bill? And can he further outline what legal advice he has seen on whether the ministerial code will be breached if MPs are asked next week to vote on provisions that will undermine those legal obligations? Mr Speaker, there really was no need for it to come to this. The elements of the protocol left to negotiate are not insignificant, but neither are they insurmountable. With trust, progress could easily have been secured. At the start of a new chapter for our United Kingdom, we cannot afford to be seen as a country that cannot be trusted. As Margaret Thatcher said, Britain does not renounce treaties. Indeed, to do so would damage our integrity as well as international relations. In those interests, in the national interest, I urge the government to stop the posturing, rediscover their responsibility and secure the deal that was promised to the people of this country.
Secretary of State.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. I would just say initially to the Honourable Lady, I think she should wait until she sees legislation tomorrow, because hopefully she will then see that actually what we're doing is delivering on the very promises that she was just referring to. She made the comment about the Prime Minister's campaigning and our manifesto pledge, which I referred to in my opening remarks. This bill that we will bring forward absolutely delivers on our manifesto pledges, and she will see that when she sees the bill. The UK internal market legislation that we will bring forward this week delivers on our commitment to legislate for unfettered access, something Northern Ireland businesses have consistently asked us to do and to ensure that we deliver certainty. This will give the certainty that the people and businesses, the economy of Northern Ireland has been asking for, and it supports the delivery of the protocol in all circumstances, in line with the approach we set out in our command paper in May. The safety net we will implement and we will outline this week will deliver on the commitments made also, as I say, in that general election manifesto. Specifically, we will implement the provision in the protocol that Northern Ireland is fully part of the UK customs territory by ensuring that goods moving within the UK will never, even inadvertently, have to pay EU tariffs. We will ensure that businesses based in Northern Ireland have true unfettered access to the rest of the United Kingdom without paperwork. And we will ensure that there is no confusion about the fact that while Northern Ireland will remain subject to the EU state aid regime for the duration of the protocol, Great Britain will not be subject to EU rules in this area. These steps are rightly part of the UK Internal Market Bill, the overriding aim of which is to ensure that the UK's own internal market operates effectively, and I hope all members of the House will support that endeavour. The House will, of course, have an opportunity to debate these matters when it sees the details in full when it's considering the bill. Further, that bill will strengthen Northern Ireland's place in the UK customs territory and ensure that the UK does take back control of its laws in an organised way after the 31st of December, exactly as we promised in the manifesto that won a resounding victory and mandate from the people of this country at last year's election. I cannot comment on the details of the Treasury Solicitor's resignation. I haven't seen his resignation letter, but we do wish him well. And we will continue to work at pace with the EU in the Joint Committee. And I would stress the Honourable Lady that she should not presume what the outcome of the Joint Committee will be. We continue to work at pace with the EU on that to ensure that we can reach a fair and positive outcome for Northern Ireland. That has always been and continues to be our priority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United Kingdom government signed the withdrawal agreement with the Northern Ireland Protocol. This Parliament voted that withdrawal agreement into UK legislation. The government is now changing the operation of that agreement. Given that, how can the government reassure future international partners that the UK can be trusted to abide by the legal obligations of the agreements it signs?
I thank my right honourable friend for the question. We have worked with the EU in a spirit of good faith, and I know we continue to do that, both sides working in a spirit of good faith, to ensure that we do implement the arrangements which uphold the fundamental principles that lie behind the protocol. And of course, our first priority continues to be to secure agreement on the protocol for the Joint Committee and the wider free trade agreement. But the withdrawal agreement and protocol are not like any other treaty. It was written on the assumption that subsequent agreements could be reached between us and the EU on the detail. That is the entire purpose of the Specialised Joint Committee. And we continue to believe that that is possible, but as a responsible government, we cannot allow businesses to not have certainty for January. And the reality is that the UK Internal Market Bill and the Finance Bill are the last legislative opportunities that we have to give that certainty and confidence to the people and businesses of Northern Ireland that we would deliver what we agreed in the protocol, what we outlined in our manifesto and what we set out in the command paper.
Here. The Prime Minister referred to Northern Ireland and said this is a good deal when he struck it last year. Now he seems to disagree with himself. There's U-turns everywhere, but this is something else. No wonder it's reported today that the head of the UK Government Legal Department has just quit because of the rolling back of the withdrawal agreement in Northern Ireland. Their internal market bill is taking a wrecking ball to devolution. They're hell-bent on a poor deal or a no-deal Brexit and to hang with the implications. But this using the internal market bill to renege on parts of the withdrawal agreement is extraordinary and dangerous. Can the Minister explain what discussions he's had with Cabinet colleagues about the impact of these plans on Northern Irish business and the Good Friday Agreement? What advanced discussions did he have with the Northern Irish Executive? I suspect the answer is precious few. We've all seen the willful disregard this government has for devolution and a disregard for their own international reputation too. Who will want to do business with a government that can't stick to an agreement with itself, never mind with anyone else, and makes it up as it goes along, as we've heard just now, and as the people in Scotland are only too aware?
Sir Ian Duncanson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I wonder if my right honourable friend recalls that in the Act that gave effect to the withdrawal agreement, it's quite clear in clause 38 that the government did reserve to itself the right to make clarifications under the sovereignty clause. Now, given that is the case, and given that when the protocol was signed, the government recognised that the state aids rules would apply to Northern Ireland, this extension of them to the rest of GB is an interpretation by the European Union, and the government is quite within its rights to dispute that interpretation and use clause 38 to explain that they don't agree with that and will not implement such an agreement.
Well, my right honourable friend, I know, has spoken about these issues over the last year or so and has been very clear about this position, and he is absolutely right that what we are doing, outlining in the UK Internal Market Bill, will be clarifying and being clear about the points about what will apply in January if we are not able to get satisfactory and mutually suitable conclusions through the Specialist Joint Committee and that wider free trade agreement. It is reasonable and sensible that the government should give that certainty and clarity to the businesses and people in Northern Ireland, which in itself ensures that we are abiding by and delivering on the Good Friday Agreement, to ensure that there will be no borders between East and West or North and South. And he is absolutely right. Great Britain will not be subject to EU rules in the state aid area, whilst recognising the unique position of Northern Ireland.
Hilary Benn.
I'm afraid the Secretary of State's protestations of innocence don't really wash, because the government has given the impression over the last 2 days, and the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead addressed this question, that the government may not be trusted to honour obligations it has freely entered into. Now, I wonder if the Secretary of State could answer a very specific question relating to the Northern Ireland Protocol that he had some trouble in answering in the summer when he appeared before the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee. Will goods moving from GB to Northern Ireland be required to complete export declarations, import declarations, or entry summary declarations? Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, actually, as the right honourable gentleman, I would assume knows in reality this is part of the discussions that are going on between the Specialist Joint Committee, between us and the EU, to deal with these issues. Our view is it should be a very, very flexible, as Michel Barnier himself has outlined, in terms of respecting the unique position of Northern Ireland's situation, because those goods going from GB to Northern Ireland, by definition, are very, very low risk. And what we've got to ensure is that we do not end up in a situation where it is presumed that 100% of the goods going from GB to Northern Ireland are what the EU would refer to as at-risk goods. That would be inappropriate for Northern Ireland businesses, drive up prices in Northern Ireland and restrict supply to Northern Ireland. That does not fit with the protocol's outline of Northern Ireland remaining an integral part of the UK customs territory and single market.
We're heading to North Dorset with Simon Hoare. Yes. Simon Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the moment, as far as Northern Ireland is concerned, there appears to be no certainty either for businesses, for the long-term future of the Good Friday Agreement, as clearly any transporting of goods between North and South will now need to be checked somewhere and somehow. And in echoing the remarks of my right honourable friend, the member for Maidenhead, the continuity of our country as a country that keeps its word and abides by the rule of law and international obligations. What certainty can my right honourable friend give me that the government understands the seriousness of these issues?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are those in this House who will tell you that the protocol is the problem here, when in fact the protocol is a symptom of the problem, which is 4 years of terrible political decision making, and it is now the law, and this government is obliged to implement it in full. Mr. Speaker, a member of this House told the BBC yesterday that his party had been engaged with the government since January to achieve this change. Given that the government is legally bound to rigorous impartiality, and given that they have cited the peace process among their motive, I hope they'll indicate what engagement there has been with all the parties and whether they value better the guidance of their top legal advisor or the DUP. And can I say to the Secretary of State, can I caution, please, to not use the threat of a border on the island of Ireland or the hard-won impartiality of the Good Friday Agreement as a cat's paw in this or any other negotiation.
Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, this party and my party have voted against this withdrawal agreement. We have warned ministers about the impact that the withdrawal agreement has not just on Northern Ireland, but the foot in the door for the EU, for the rest of the United Kingdom. And I'm pleased that we now have a bill which, at least on the reporting, appears to deal with some of those issues. But I'm disappointed to hear from the Secretary of State today that, first of all, we still don't know the depth and the width of checks for goods coming into Northern Ireland, and that we are still going to be left with state aid rules applying in Northern Ireland which will stop us defending ourselves against predatory behaviour from the Irish Republic and other European countries. I want to emphasise to the Secretary of State that we will judge this bill on whether it delivers on the kinds of issues which he has promised and his government has promised to address in trying to undo the damage which the withdrawal agreement has caused. But ultimately, this agreement, which damages the whole of the United Kingdom, this union-splitting, economy-destroying and also the border-creating agreement, has to be changed and replaced, and can be replaced and should be replaced.
Heading to North Down with Stephen Farry. Stephen Farry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Any unilateral change to the very necessary protocol risks undermining the Good Friday Agreement, risks a hard border returning to the island of Ireland, and places Northern Ireland businesses in a very uncertain legal position. Does the government recognise that in the event that they make unilateral changes, and in particular undermine the agreement, that they will reduce the prospects of a future relationship with the European Union? And in particular, there will be zero chance of negotiating a trade deal with the United States under a Biden administration and with a Democrat-controlled Congress.
What authority do we have to criticise China for not keeping her side of the bargain under the joint declaration in relation to Hong Kong if we are seen to approach our own treaty obligations to the European Union in this way?
Speaker, I didn't hear an answer to my honourable friend's question, so I'll ask it again. Can the Secretary of State explain whether a failure to uphold international legal commitments would breach the ministerial code?
Mr. Speaker, does the Secretary of State recognise that, as others have reminded him, there would be terrible future consequences for Britain if the government failed to abide by an international treaty it has signed? Does he recognise that, yes or no?
That's right. No, I think I do. As I said earlier on, I absolutely recognise the importance of following the international laws and the rule of law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessments has the Secretary of State made on how the protocol, or the failure to implement the protocol in full, will impact on the flow of Northern Irish goods exported to Great Britain, necessarily through the Republic of Ireland and then through the ports of Holyhead?
We know people in Number 10 like to move fast and break things, but I don't think we knew that that extended to the Northern Ireland Protocol, with the consequences that will have for the Good Friday Agreement and the Devolution settlement as a whole. Does he accept that these aren't just bits of paper, these affect people's lives and livelihoods? And who, once all this is broken, is going to pick up the pieces?
Hear, hear.
David Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Article 6 of the Act of Union provides, in essence, that no duties will be applied to goods passing between Great Britain and Ireland. Does my right honourable friend agree that these are constitutional rights still enjoyed by the people of Northern Ireland, and that unless the protocol is clarified and adjusted, those rights may possibly be infringed?
Heading to Brentford and Isleworth with Ruth Cadbury. Ruth Cadbury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A little over 2 months ago, the government in its command paper, defined the Northern Ireland Protocol as existing to ensure the progress that the people of Northern Ireland have made in the 22 years since the Good Friday Agreement is secured into the future. And it went on to say, whilst the protocol is in force, both the UK and EU must respect and abide by the legal obligations it contains, as well as our other international law obligations, unquote. Does the Secretary of State stand by that commitment? And if not, why not?
Yes, and I would suggest the Honourable Lady that paragraph 19 in fact states of the command paper, the protocol is clear that nothing in it prevents Northern Ireland businesses enjoying unfettered access to the rest of the UK internal market. We will ensure this. As set out in the New Decade New Approach deal, we will legislate to guarantee unfettered access for Northern Ireland's businesses to the whole of the UK internal market.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that there is no implication that the UK is, at this stage, seeking to leave the withdrawal agreement, and that it is right that adjustments, and indeed legitimate that adjustments, are made so that UK courts have jurisdiction in the UK, and that the Northern Irish economy is protected from otherwise punitive tariffs?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, but we are still determined, as I said in my opening remarks, to deliver on the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. We hope those negotiations come to a suitable and sensible conclusion. This is purely a set of clauses that we're putting in place that, should that not happen, we are clear about what the position will be in January, and that there is legal structures in place to be able to deliver on those issues, including unfettered access.
Paisley. Speaker, on the 20th of May, the Government outlined its 4 key principles for supporting Northern Ireland through this process: that we would have unfettered access as businesses across the Irish Sea, that there would be no tariffs on internal UK trade, there would be no new customs infrastructure, and Northern Ireland would benefit equally from the trade deals that are currently under negotiation. Any customs arrangement, I hope the Secretary of State will agree, any customs arrangement that affects trade or impacts on trade in any way between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom in either direction is unacceptable and must be stopped. Has this government the mettle, or do they have a tinfoil spine when it comes to standing up from our detractors in Brussels and our debtors in the Republic of Ireland? Give the people of Northern Ireland the certainty, give the businesses in Northern Ireland the certainty they deserve, and let us have certainty in those 4 key principles.
Well, I would say to the honourable gentleman that obviously our determination and desire is to be able to deliver that certainty through the free trade agreement negotiations and the joint committee work. What we will be outlining tomorrow in the bill is, if that does not succeed, giving that certainty to Northern Ireland businesses about what the framework or the legal structures will be from January to ensure that we do deliver on unfettered access.
Mr. Speaker, the much-hyped Financial Times story has caused understandable concern right across the island of Ireland and more widely. So can my right honourable friend reassure the House that the measures being introduced tomorrow are solely a safety net, not a safety net to the work of the Joint Committee, and do not in any way prevent the Government from complying with the Northern Ireland Protocol in full or from compromising the Good Friday Agreement?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. We are doing this in order to make sure that we can always deliver the wider objective of the protocol, which is to protect peace in Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, and to do so with, as part of the protocol, outlining, as we did in the command paper, how we will do those issues that are still outstanding, if they are outstanding, at the end of December.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, whatever reassurances the Secretary of State gives today, people in Northern Ireland simply cannot trust a word that comes out of this Tory government's mouth. At every single turn, they have used us as a bargaining chip, as a useful tactic, as part of a cynical game. So rather than taking his steer from cosy chats with the DUP, will the Secretary of State once and for all accept that people in Northern Ireland, the majority voice in Northern Ireland, will accept nothing less than the full implementation of the protocol?
Sir Robert.
The Secretary of State has said that he and the Government are committed to the rule of law. Does he recognise that the adherence to the rule of law is not negotiable? Against that background, will he assure us that nothing that is proposed in this legislation does or potentially might breach international legal obligations or international legal arrangements that we have entered into? And can I answer specifically the other point? Was any ministerial direction given?
I would say to my honourable friend that yes, this does break international law in a very specific and limited way. We are taking the power to disapply the EU law concept of direct effect required by Article 4 in a certain very tightly defined circumstances.
Andrew Gwynn.
Thank you. I'm astounded that the Minister has just conceded that he's proposing to break international law. Perhaps for the first time, I agree with the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead. This is a question of trust when it comes to signing international treaties. We can't condemn others for seemingly breaking the international rules-based order if we're prepared to do the same. And it's incredibly damaging to our reputation as we seek to acquire trade treaties from guys and say that if the Internal Market Bill tomorrow seeks to disapply Section 7A of the Withdrawal Act, that would be a clear breach of our international obligations, and for that reason, shouldn't he rule it out?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister was clear yesterday that an agreement with our European friends must be made by the 15th of October if it is to be enforced by the end of the year. Can my right honourable friend confirm that under no circumstances will we agree to any demands which would force us to give up our rights as an independent state?
Absolutely. There has been a regular, clear mandate from the people of the United Kingdom that we should get on and deliver on what they asked for. That's to leave the European Union and to bring back the sovereignty to the UK Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, Adam Tompkins, MSP, described the proposed changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol as in breach of our international treaty obligations. Can the Minister confirm he agrees with his Tory colleagues' analysis, and does he accept that the Internal Market Bill demonstrates a complete failure in negotiating strategy that gives Scotland a raw deal that it didn't vote for?
Christian Matheson.
Honourable members across the House have talked about the importance of trust and how this will damage the trust of our European Union partners in the negotiations that we are currently undertaking. And the timing is strange as we head towards the crunch point for those trade negotiations. So was it an intentional effect or an unintended consequence that we put this torpedo into the confidence of the European Union just as we're heading towards those negotiations, so that it makes it much more likely that we've destroyed their trust in us, and a no-deal scenario that so many honourable members on the other side of the House want to achieve is actually achieved?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party manifesto described the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol as, quote, a great new deal. The Conservative manifesto said it was a deal that was, quote, signed, sealed and ready. It explicitly stated, and I quote, no more renegotiations. And it was also a manifesto that promised to take our whole country out of the European Union as one united kingdom. Given that none of those things have proven to be true, and given that he has just conceded the government is proposing arrangements that would break international treaties, why should anyone at home or abroad trust a single word this government says?
Mr. Speaker, signing an international treaty isn't a game, it's a commitment. Catherine Barnard is Professor of European Law at the University of Cambridge, and she warns that we've agreed to a dispute resolution mechanism that could lead to heavy fines or further sanctions. So what legal advice has the government taken? And if ministers choose to ignore that advice, could the minister spell out the consequences for those ministers?
Martin Doherty Hughes.
Whatever form it takes, Brexit cannot be allowed to imperil the Good Friday Agreement, including the seamless border between the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland. A clear statement of intent, Mr. Speaker, from your counterpart on Capitol Hill, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now, given that they make it clear that the Right Honourable Gentleman's Government can rip up international agreements to suit its own version of Brexit, or it can have a US-UK trade deal, but not both, what will it be?
Thank you. The Secretary of State will know that the North East has traditionally sent proportionally more of its young people into the armed forces than any other region. As a consequence, we have many veterans who served during the Troubles. They, their loved ones, and indeed all of us are proud of the hard-won peace. At the heart of the protocol is protecting the Good Friday Agreement. Is he seriously contemplating using it as a bargaining chip in a trade deal?
Edwards. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Mr Speaker. Listening to the debate today, would I be right in summarising that the oven-ready deal we were promised by the Conservative Party at the general election is missing a cooking apparatus?